is like a big bread basket where you're collecting the ambient like bacteria and yeast in the air. Now we've actually had quite success with some of our IPAs, and we've had a lot of traction with pastry stouts. So we try to have at least 1 or 2 pastry stouts on tap. The latest one we have is like bananas, peanut butter, chocolate, coconut, and then rum barrel aged coffee. So it's pretty nice.
That's one of the things we like to have a lot of fun with, the flavors. One of the things that we definitely want to impress on everybody is we don't just do sours. Everybody kind of refers to us as the sour brewery, but Dan has spent a lot of time researching how to do different styles like stouts and IPAs. We like to have fun with fruits and different combinations of adjuncts. So lots of unique fruits. Like we did a beer called Caruba La Tarta, and it's like this really interesting South American fruit that like kind of looks like a banana and tastes like a passion fruit. Added some coconut and key lime, and it kind of tasted like this tropical kind of. I imagine sitting on some cruise ship somewhere with this drink, getting ready to like go swimming or something. I mean, it was fantastic, and that was really popular. And it just kind of helped people see that even though we do sours, we do other sorts of things, and sour doesn't necessarily have to mean it's going to like take the enamel off your teeth or something. It's just a tart, or, like the natural tartness of a fruit, like raspberries are kind of tart. And so we'll add that sort of thing to our beers, and you get that kind of tartness, as opposed to like we added stuff to make it fake and sour.
I mean, there's definite considerations in that too. So when you're adding fruit to a beer, fruit actually has a low pH, which in itself will make something sour. So we don't usually try to make it extra sour on it. So we do keep in consideration on those aspects of it.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that we do differently from a lot of places is we hand process a lot of the fruit. We try to either locally or regionally source different fruits. We get rhubarb, for example, from Anderson Gardens up near Brookings. We had over several hundred pounds of rhubarb, and Dan 450, which Dan and some friends of ours hand processed down to create a puree that could finally be added to the beer. And things like that take days. We created a cranberry beer recently that over 150 pounds that Dan turned into a spiced cranberry sauce. And so instead of using extracts, we try to use lots and lots of real fruit. And we try to keep things as local and regional as possible. Obviously, like, you're not going to get certain fruits from this area, but we try to when we can to get like our coffee and our coffee stouts. We source from local roasters, just kind of trying to keep things, kind of South Dakota as much as possible.
We try to do like our unique twist on it too. So we do have like our house culture, and that house culture includes some local yeast that we harvested off of a pine cone. It gives this like fruity kind of aspect to it that we use in the IPAs that come across really well. And then we also use that in like the high ABV beers. It doesn't really show or express itself, but it just makes something like entirely unique that we just prop up the yeast in house and then use that. And we've had a lot of success with it. We've also had some failures throughout, but I mean, I think every brewery has that. It's just understanding when not to release a beer But yeah, I mean, a lot of times when we do like these long invested beers of either aging it in a barrel for 2 years or spending 3 days processing cranberries, it I definitely relate to some chefs where eventually they just don't eat their food because you're so tired. Like there's definitely a threshold where I don't want to see rhubarb until next summer. Like I'm pretty good on cranberries, but we just love experimenting. We like the idea of like, well, how do we do an upside down pineapple cake? All right, well, we could do pineapple, we can do some maraschino cherries, and then we can try sourcing like, I don't know, 10 sheet cakes of vanilla sheet cake, and then try to find somebody that won't put frosting on it, and then add that into it. And sometimes we just can't find it, and that's when we're stuck with, okay, we got to make 10 sheet cakes now. So then we just go through the process of doing that. But I think that's where the artisan part comes into our name. We definitely want the product to be something that we're happy with.
Yeah, we put a lot of passion into what we do. One of the things that we say a lot is we turn our passion crafted into beer, and I think that's definitely holds true. So talking about how we have gotten to where we are. When we first started brewing, we've been open as a brewery since July of 2018. And so we've been working on different beers. And our original plan had been to do distribution only. We were just going to do small batches and send out bottles and kegs. But we realized that, well, honestly, we realized that there's a lot more money in making your own beer and selling it for yourself. So we kind of opened up a little bit of a small tap room in our brewery, and it was, we called it a pop-up tap room. We did it like Fridays and Saturdays, and it held about 15 people. We were able to offer beers from different breweries. We became friends with some other breweries in the region, and we would sell their stuff. But we realized that that's kind of a little too small for us to actually sustain any sort of actual business. So we were driving past Monk's one time last September, and we saw that the East Bank Depot building, well, I don't think it was East Bank at that time, BNSF, was they were getting ready to rent out these spaces. And so we kind of jumped in on that, just called immediately to see if they had availability. I mean, I think being a brewery and being downtown is really key. So we decided that we were going to do our tap room there, and we had anticipated being open in April, but COVID kind of hit, and one thing, led to another, and we kind of ended up having to push our opening back. When Governor Nome said that everybody was, ready to open in June, we kind of realized that we had to start opening downtown, and so it's been pretty good. We're definitely ready for this to be over. Yeah, hopefully next year is like a big opening for us.
Yeah, we've never actually had like an anniversary per se or birthday,
Yeah.
Even though we've been around for a while. Yeah, but I mean, our intent is pretty much like what you see now, having a downtown tap room. Eventually, if we could have like a dream, like the phase 3 would be moving out to still within the region and still having the downtown tap room, but have like an acreage with the farm on it so we can actually do true farm style. And then potentially maybe get like a destination type brewery for summers, but we're definitely not at that point, not with COVID going on. But it's always good to have like a 5-year plan, and that's definitely in the future of our 5-year plan. Exploring more with doing IPAs, and then definitely doing more stouts. I've been having a lot of fun with that. It's a very long brew day. For us to do a stout, it usually takes roughly like anywhere from 13 to 17 hours to do it. So before it was like a sleeping bag in the office at the brewery. Now we've actually moved this overstuffed beanbag that we had, this love sack. So now I'll just sleep on that. But yeah, so I don't know.
That's the story of Covert.
Great. Well, we can start opening things up for questions here a little bit. So if you have a question for Dan and Stacey, feel free to drop it in the chat. You can either do that on Facebook or through the Zoom chat directly, and we should see it here live in the studio. That feels kind of cool to say. But I guess I'll kick us off here with my first question, and that's, so you guys have this intelligence, like Department of Defense background, and now you own a boutique brewery, and it is clear from listening to you talk that you know an intense amount of information about the creation of these beers. So can you talk a little bit more about like how you gained this knowledge that you have? Because it seems like you have these two areas where you know so much about, and one of them is born out of passion and the other is born out of like your career, you know?
I would have to say, like, for us, and any advice that I could give people is definitely learn that moment when you're around smart people and learn to shut up and just listen and absorb. And then also challenge those things that come through. Like if somebody says this is set in stone, this is how you do it, experiment. There's been multiple times, and I thank Stacey for having the patience with me, where if you looked behind our couch like 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, there was many jars with different cultures of like, here's one that's one foot away from the waterfall. Here's one that's like 100 feet away, of just harvesting yeast. And then a lot of times I'll go through the process of making a beer, and I'll just test like the sugar level or the alcohol level, and then I won't even drink it. It'll just be one that we end up dumping, or it just stays around the house just to see, okay, what does it do if it gets more oxygen into it? What does it do if it's in metal? What if it does like in glass? So, but a lot of it was research. I mean, it's like any other job. Like, we went to college. We've had a lot of experience in training through Army and other classes, but really it's like on the job training that you get, or just you taking the passion to find something online and experiment with it. I mean, I think that's where we got most of our knowledge from.
Google's your friend.
Yeah, Google's your friend. But then there's also some like key opportunities where you wouldn't have even known to search for something unless somebody had kind of told you. So, but a lot of that is join local homebrew groups, join different Facebook groups. I think it's the same thing with any topic. Like, it could be business, it could be mapping, it could be development. You're only going to get as far as what you have available to you. So you definitely have to open those doors.
Awesome. So another question that I have for you here is, so a lot of people are familiar with breweries, obviously, like Sioux Falls has a number of them, but I want to hammer home the concept of a boutique brewery and all the unique challenges that kind of come with the unique styles of beers that you guys are creating. And so I know, Stacey, I've talked a little bit to you, and you mentioned earlier, Dan, about like dumping beers. Like how talk a little bit more about the effort and like the sheer, like you spoke about the cranberries and the rhubarb, but like how many gallons of beer are you dumping? Yeah.
So if you're putting it at like, it's one of those topics, especially in a house, that we're not going to record like from an analytical perspective, just because it's one of those that you just don't want to depress yourself on.
I will say that we have been very fortunate to not have that happen very often. Yeah, thankfully.
Our first batch of beer was bad.
Yeah.
Under Covert, and it wasn't something that we did. It was, we had gotten strawberries,
some bad fruit,
and the strawberries themselves were bad. We don't pasteurize our fruit except for the ones where we make sauce, but that's not for the reason to actually pasteurize it. It's more infusing spices the way that we're trying to get into the flavor of the beer itself. But yeah, it was a rough month because I was totally doubting any capability I had. And then we were using more strawberries, and I noticed the strawberries had this weird smell to it. And I contacted the vendor, and they're like, "Oh, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
We'll refund you for it." And it was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
But a lot of times, the ones where we've had 3 failures, and one was the strawberry. The second one was we kind of went heavy on floral aspects of it. We had done a spontaneous beer where we collected it in the cool ship, let it cool down with hibiscus flowers, and then we added ginger and we added something else to it, lime. And then we tasted it like months later, and we were like, "Oh,
It's like your grandmother's soap."
it was like a candle or something." So we've now implemented the rule of if there's a floral candle that exists, we're just not going to go that route.
But so as far as like the boutique aspect of that, when at the time we were only brewing like 4 times a month, maybe. So that's, a quarter of everything you've done. We keep everything really small. I think we have one of the smallest brew systems definitely in Sioux Falls. And so we can only make so much beer, especially with the styles that we do that, most of them take several months to get there. Now that we're doing some other styles, it's a little different, but originally it was like 2 to 3 months for a single beer. So when you find out that you have to dump it, that's time and effort. Not even, looking at the financial aspect of it, but it's kind of a big deal. So we try not to do that.
So you guys are technically a nano brewery, correct? So can you tell us what the distinction between a nano brewery versus a micro brewery versus a regular brewery?
Well, a lot of it, I think if you go from like the brewing association standard of it, everything's done by barrels. So a barrel equates to around 30 gallons. So for us, we're under 2,000 barrels a year. So there qualifies as a nano. I think there may be some other breweries in town that also qualify as a nano, but typically most ones say that they're microbreweries. For us, we like being at that nano size. We do a lot of incorporation into oak, which oak, like spirit barrels, wine barrels, takes up space, and it's a huge investment. So I don't see us really ever going over 2,000 barrels. We do not have the intent of getting like a large canning line to kick out IPAs and such.
That would also take away from the boutique aspect of it. We already, for 450 pounds of rhubarb that went into 100 gallons of beer.
That was like 150. So yeah.
Yeah. Trying to increase that size and still manage hand processing all of that stuff. It would be impossible, and it would take away from the character of our brewery.
And at the end of the day, what you guys are doing, like you say, artisan, like it is like you are making art. It is art in beer form, right? And you can't mass produce art in any way, shape, or, until, and if you try to, then you get motel art, right? Like it's not, it doesn't scale. Art doesn't scale. So it's good that, like, I think that you guys recognize that, you feel this, people who want this rich boutique style beer where there's all these different elements to it that takes time and effort and love and passion, like you mentioned, to create. So it's really cool to hear you guys talk about that.
Well, I think that's the romance of it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have done beers again, like we did a beer called Peach AF. We recently this summer did batch 2 or blend 2 of Peach AF. So it's not the same beer. There's temperature, there's what microbes went into it, the peaches that were used from that year. So it's never going to be the same. But I mean, I think that's the unique aspect of it. It's just like if you're trying to compare something onto that, especially on the sour side or the fruited wilds, it would be very close to how wine like vineyards are. you're never going to have the same batch of wine as the previous year. It's going to have different tear that's associated to it. So
It looks like we have a question here from the chat. It's from Maureen. She says, do you distribute exclusively through your own storefront? Do you have plans to change that?
Well, we do distribute to other locations, but I can't stress enough for this is for all breweries. If you really want to help a brewery out, buy from the actual brewery storefront, because otherwise they're cutting out a huge percentage of what you're actually going to be getting.
Yep, especially now.
Yeah.
It would, I mean, even with winter coming up, it's already the slow season, and then throwing COVID into it. It's the only way you're gonna really help all of the breweries out is by going to their storefront and giving them your money, your business patronage.
But we do, and hopefully I don't like mess up where we definitely distribute to JJ's, Fogies, Sycamore, Hy-Vee,
Jails on Western, Bread and Circus.
So, but I mean, if there's any locations that you want it at, let them know, or let us know too. Yeah. So we're not going to turn down a sale.
Yeah, seriously.
Looks like we have a couple questions here. I'm going to try and read the first one. So Sarah says, maybe I missed this, but how did you end up in Sioux Falls?
Geez, that could be a talk in itself. Yeah. So when I became friends with an individual, or that brewery in Belgium, he had recommended that I had hit a point that I should open something. And ironically enough, my parents live in Sibley, Iowa, and they were offered a building at like a great deal. There was a lot of construction that needed to be done to it, but we decided, all right, let's open one in Sibley, Iowa. The brewery's Drink Me. You should check it out. But I also learned a lesson that sometimes if you want to do specific styles, you definitely have to have all partners on board. So we just decided to sell our portion to open Covert to do the styles that we specifically wanted. Mm-hmm. And why Sioux Falls? I guess not a hit on Sibley, but we weren't going to live in Sibley. Yeah. So Sioux Falls, we had always visited, like loved many it. Sibley Iowans do, and then we really liked it. So we lucked out by getting a place downtown. We love the downtown scene, and it was definitely a choice that we're glad that we made.
And look at you now, you're wearing a Sioux Falls flag mask.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I had to compliment you on, because we're both very dapper today with our Sioux Falls mask. Looks like we have another question here from Matt Paulson. Do you have a separate production facility than your storefront?
Yeah, actually, the original where we had our pop-up tap room, we have a warehouse on the west side that we do all our production at. So, and that one we don't foresee like going away in the next couple of years. And even so, we will still have to keep that facility because we have so many barrels. I think we are at like 70 barrels that we have there. You can't really move them, especially not like a good distance. Yeah. You're including oxygen to it that just is going to give it some off flavors. So we'll have to keep that. Are we?
But you're sorry. You're not. Yeah, we all just got distracted by the chat screen. But you're not. You don't do the pop-up tap room in your facility location anymore.
No, I took that over with barrels.
Yeah, because when we were doing that, we had to. It was 3 days away from production, 3 days away from brewing, and so it definitely took away from what we were able to do and create.
And at that time, we were both working full-time jobs. So the key aspect was either doing it late in the evening for brewing or on weekends. So when we did the pop-up tap room, it was actually harder for us to do operations. So,
And at your downtown facility, do you have any like I know there's like 1 barrel or like 5 gallon brew systems. Do you do any of that at your downtown location, or is all your brewing at your facility?
So legally, both places are breweries.
Mhm.
The downtown facility we do not brew at, we ferment at or age.
Okay.
So we do have small barrels there, and that's where we were experimenting with barrel aged pastry stouts.
Mhm.
And we're going to continue having some kind of fermentation down there. But otherwise, it's just a lot easier to have it at the production side because the transport of something into a tank to bring it up on the ramp, just getting into it.
Logistically, it's annoying.
Yeah. It's very annoying.
Let me see here. What's the next question in the queue? So are you just distributing to restaurants, or do you have some kind of cans elsewhere? That's from Marine.
So it's up to you.
No, we are doing both. We have crowlers at Fogies, JJ's, and Sycamore Hy-Vee.
And we'll have bottles.
Oh,
that will be
and
coming up.
Willikers too carries our stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, we are distributing packaged items too. So
Next question is from Sadie on Facebook. She says, what has been the most difficult challenge and the biggest reward about your entrepreneurship journey? I love that question,
Oh,
Sadie.
that is a good question. As far as the most difficult challenge, at least for my aspect, we've actually had quite a few challenges. When we were ready to start packaging our product last year, the government had shut down, and so we were unable to get label approval for anything, so we weren't able to actually release anything.
Yeah.
And from then, it was kind of, I think our biggest challenge right now is obviously COVID. It's just affected kind of everything we do as far as like.
You're welcome. Have a great day. You too. Bye.
As far as getting beer out to the public, we would definitely like, our downtown tap room we weren't able to open when we wanted to open. We had anticipated opening early. Just lots of little hiccups here and there.
I guess for me, I know both of us are very like analytical type personalities or approach. I mean, it's what we did through most of our career. But it's really hard to do analytics for this area because the data is it's so skewed. COVID has not helped. Us deciding to do the tap room, which we said we never were going to, and then us doing the downtown one, it's like we're faulting ourselves each time.
Yeah.
We keep making this harder for ourselves. I don't know if that's just an Army thing or what, but there's constant moments where you kind of look back and you say, how could we have done this better? And you just start counting the things on it.
Mhm.
I can't stress enough, you should really do a business plan. We never did a business plan.
We kind of did it.
We had an idea and what we were doing, but we also had to pivot constantly throughout. Where before we moved here, we lived in Austin, Texas. And we kind of took that model of what the brewery we wanted to be in that area of the US. And when we moved here, we were like, oh, we'll do a warehouse brewery. They're so successful. Like
everywhere else around the country, they're huge.
And here it wasn't.
Mm-mm.
It was like maybe in 5 years it might be, or maybe it may never be. For some reason, if you're not in walking distance of downtown, it's extremely hard. So we had to make decisions and pivot into that kind of area.
I think some of the most rewarding aspects of it, though, are, in spite of the challenges, we're still here. One of the things that has always been really cool for me, we've done everything that we can on our own. Financially, most of the build out that we did for downtown. Dan's just like, I already think he's amazing, but he's just surprised the heck out of me with building the bar and doing a lot of the artwork and, just moving from this technical side to the science aspects of the yeast and the bacteria to doing a lot of like some of the carpentry stuff downtown. It's just, I think seeing those finished products, that's kind of been rewarding, and teaching people about the different styles and the different products and seeing them taste things and seeing that they like it. That's really rewarding too. It's always weird to hear people say like, oh, that's not too bad. Like, well, I guess they were expecting it to be bad.
I didn't like sours before.
Yeah.
I mean, that we knew that was going to be a challenge. We knew the styles of beers that we were wanting to do and what would we do were not your typical beers that were done in Sioux Falls. So we knew there was going to be a challenge with that.
Yeah.
And the reward is we've gotten great feedback from individuals, that positive feedback from individuals in the area, and I'm hoping becoming more of a staple name that people realize Covert exists.
Yeah.
But I would have to say, like, the biggest reward throughout all of this is, I mean, we could have chosen any location. I mean, we always joke that we should have just opened in Malaga, Spain. That was one of our go-to areas. And the fruit there is amazing. So it would be like really easy to get. But I mean, I get to work every day with Stacey. So
I was just going to say something cheesy like that.
But not. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
It's true though.
Yeah.
It's true.
I mean, in pretty much the entire time that Stacey and I have been together, we've worked either for the same company or the same organization.
Yeah.
I mean, we've traveled to Afghanistan together. We've traveled to all sorts of different locations. So just being able to continue that and do something that we were extremely passionate about, just even before the brewery, we were those couples that there's many couples around that would go to vineyards and breweries and just enjoying the product. So,
well, that's what they say, the old expression, right? If you do something that you love, you never work a day in your life. And I think that might be compounded if you do it with someone that you love. It's the same. It's the same kind of.
I'd like to call shenanigans on that though. If you do something you love, you work even harder at it. Like just 7 days a week, there's something going on at either the tap room or the brewery. Dan's constantly, finding things to do and pushing himself and both of us to be better and do better. And so that's kind of, even in spite of like all of the things, he's still my best friend. Like that's 12 years of being together 24/7. And
it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to comment on something that you said earlier. You were talking about how, like, at each step in your journey, you've kind of realized, like, oh, we did this wrong, or we were making things more difficult for ourselves. And I just want to say that that's kind of the story of entrepreneurship, right? Like, we talk to entrepreneurs all the time out at Zeal, and that entrepreneurs are a bunch of people who are figuring it out. You know what I mean? Like, no entrepreneur goes into something and nails it perfectly, like right out of the gate. Entrepreneurship is messy. It takes trial and error and figuring things out and slight adjustments and realignments, and that's what leads to success. Is that like tweaking process of pivoting towards something that's gonna provide you with what you're looking for. So I think that's a really important note for people to listen to. That's kind of the point of 1 Million Cups, is you see these organizations that you patronize, that you use, that you are familiar with, and you don't know the story of how they got there. So I think it's important to share, like, we were figuring things out, we didn't know. So that's really awesome to hear you say. Sarah Lum in the chat asked, have you always wanted to start your own business, or did you just fall into it?
I think for me, it was, we fell into it. Well, I fell into it. My background was always in Intel and DoD and analytics and stuff like that. And kind of when Dan said he wanted to do a brewery, it was like, okay.
So, yeah, I would Yes and no. I had always had been, like she had said, Army or working for some federal customer. But then doing a lot of like research and development for either software development, architecture, design, DevOps, whatever you name it. So we had careers, and initially it was like a little side, I wouldn't say hustle, don't want to say side project because there's another brewery with that name. But it was something that was more than a hobby. And
It's a passion.
but even when Covert first started, it was more than a hobby. But we were doing long-term sours, so it wasn't like we had to kick out product all the time.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I guess to bring it around from my rambling, we had an intention to start our own business. Did we want a business with a tap room?
Mm.
No, not originally. But now I wouldn't change it anyway. Just seeing how happy she is with customer interaction, and then occasionally me going down there and then doing customer interaction also. I mean, it's rewarding. You can't just look at it from a numbers perspective.
Yeah.
Getting human interaction into it is like totally key to keep the drive going.
And you guys have a little bit of a community built up at this point, right? Of people who are ardent supporters of the things that you're doing. I know at least of a few people that are kind of plugged into that. One of the other things that I wanted to mention was you have a program, right? Like a membership. Do you want to just plug that real quick here while we're
Yeah.
while we're talking? Because that's a pretty unique program. I hadn't heard of anything like that before.
Do you want me to do it? Yeah, so we have a membership that we do. It's called Attaché. Basically, what's included is you get 10 bottles, 10 bottles through the year, a bottle opener, and then we do a big member party. But you also get 10% off. The 10 member bottles are typically like our handpicked. These are the best ones that we think we spent the most time. The first member bottle that we released is on tap downtown. It's called Vegas after our dog.
Yeah.
But it was a wild ale. It was basically a stout that we intentionally added our wild culture to, and then we aged it in a tawny port barrel for 22 months.
Yeah.
So it's definitely robust. It has the stout qualities, the fruit flavors, the dark chocolates.
We do have kind of a bit of a following, which is really cool. It's really nice to see people come in and say like, "Oh, I heard about you guys from so and so." We have a decent sized group out of Omaha that comes up. There, I would say like 7 or 8 of our members are from Omaha. Out of right now, we have 62. And just they'll come up and buy cases and cases of beer for each other and take them back down and share them and, kind of spread the word there. We have quite a loyal group here in Sioux Falls as well, which is really, really neat to see. It's growing. Our membership is open. We are going to close it on the 1st of January, just so people are able to get their full year's worth of everything, to include like the bottles that we do. We are trying to, we ran it last year, and this year we're trying to make it better and, just kind of increase the benefits for our members, make them feel a little bit more special. They're paying for this experience and paying for this program that we feel like we just want to be able to give them back something for their support for us.
And we had been through beer memberships through other breweries and kind of saw the things that we liked and aspects of it. So we definitely want to make it something that's very special for them. Usually members, there's one beer that we've created that only members are able to purchase bottles and drink it on site. So
I think it's a great idea, especially in the time of COVID. Like, people are looking for ways to support businesses that they like support the mission of, like that they support what that business is doing. So providing that as like a way for you to connect more closely with those people who are the most passionate about your business, I think was a really, really smart move.
And the member party we had last we did safely at the brewery. We only had a certain amount of members, and we even had Bread and Circus cater for us. So there was plenty of tacos for everybody. We shut the tap room down and then did a huge bottle share type thing.
For anybody that is still interested in becoming a member, you can purchase those either online or come into the tap room and we can sign you up for that too.
Awesome. So I think we're narrowing in on our time here, but we got one more question in the chat, and then I'll ask our last question that we always ask at 1 million cups. Says Kat from Facebook says, this may have been covered, but do you use any local hops? I know you guys use a lot of local ingredients.
Yeah, we do. We've gotten some from 6 Meridian. So we use a lot of local hops and we age them. We're finally at the point that we've been taking the aged hops, and aged hops is just basically, it's kind of, I don't know, from a hop farmer's like looking at it, you probably think it would be like buying wine and then making some meal in a crock pot with it. So, but basically we take a lot of those hops and we oxidize them. We open them up and then throw them on top of the walk-in cooler to oxidize. But one particular, what is Mark's? Is Hoppy Trails?
Yeah, we primarily go through Hoppy Trails with Mark Bonema.
Yep. So all of our farmhouse and saisons, the sours, they all use Mark's hops specifically for it. Yep. For the IPAs, we kind of lean towards the juicier side. So until things like Citra and such are starting to be grown, because Citra's, I think this year or next year, is not going to be proprietary anymore. So local farmers can start using that.
Yeah,
awesome.
But yes.
I'm a big South Dakota guy, so I love the fact that you guys use ingredients from like our region to make beers for people in our region. Like it's such a like hyper local activity, and I just love.
We even use our yeast.
Yeah, exactly. Your own yeast. Yeah, exactly. So I'll ask the last question here. For those who tune in regularly, you know that each week we ask the same question at the end, and that is, what as the 1 Million Cups community can we do to help you? What can we do to support your business and help you grow and achieve the goals that you have?
Buy our beer.
Wow.
At least come down and try stuff. You may not like everything that we do. We understand people have different tastes, but definitely come down and check us out. We're open Wednesday through Sunday. Lots of opportunity.
And if we're lacking, I know we're lacking in the marketing kind of side. If somebody wants to give us advice on that, I mean, I think any help, really, I think any business is the same way, right? But yeah, I think any help would be greatly appreciated.
And I want to apologize because I'm one of those people who thought that you guys only did sour beers. So I just want to make a quick plug. It took me way too long to go down to their tap room because I didn't know that many people who would want to go drink sour beers with me. I like sour beers personally, but when I showed up, they were like, "Oh no, we have all these other options." So even if your sour beers aren't your thing, they have some delicious pastry stouts that I got to try when I was there, along with some IPAs, like you've mentioned. So definitely go check them out. They've got some really good offerings, and you will certainly find something that you like there. I can guarantee you that much. So let's take care of a few housekeeping things here. How much time do I have? Does anyone on the chat have an event? I know we glossed over that at the beginning because there wasn't much interest, but I'll just give another quick opportunity for someone to jump in and plug an event if they have one. All right. Well, if no one has that, then I'll just jump into thanking our sponsors, and we'll be out of here. So I want to thank First National Bank in Sioux Falls, Market Beat, the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship, which is where I work, along with Pinnacle Productions for adding the sizzle. I wouldn't have a fireplace behind me if it weren't for them. So thank you to the team here. And then also I want to let everybody know that we're going on our winter break here. So this is the last 1 Million Cups of 2020, and you can catch us in 2021 on January 27th with Michael Zerker of Prismatic, formerly of Zerker Technologies, I think is what his previous company was. So that'll be a really interesting one. I know that he spoke at the Innovation Expo. You should definitely tune in for that one. But I want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you in 2021. Hopefully the year is a little bit better. Thanks, everybody. Bye.